Hello YouTube and welcome to an all new Elder Scrolls lore video. Today we're talking about the Khajiit and specifically how the different breeds, or as they call them, fur stocks, come into being. This is going to be an interesting video, so strap in as we'll dive into some Khajiit lore. So, the Khajiit. As many discovered when the Elder Scrolls Online launched their Elsewhere expansions, there are many different types of Khajiit, different breeds if you will. The Khajiit themselves called these different types fur stocks instead of breeds. You've got Khajiit of all sizes and shapes, from the small, almost house cat-like Alfik to the gigantic Sencha rats, and even some almost human-like fur stock, which we haven't seen since the Elder Scrolls Arena and Daggerfall. The reason that there's such a great variety in fur stock is that the Khajiit procreation is a bit more complicated than the procreation of other races. I already touched upon it in my video on sexuality and procreation in the Elder Scrolls universe, which is in the description if you want to see it for other races. But in addition to male and female Khajiits doing the nasties in their order to procreate offspring, there's a third factor in Khajiit procreation, the moons, Messer and Secunda. The moons are central to Khajiit society, as the moons, and in which phases the moons are in, during the Khajiit's birth, are the factors which determine the fur stock of the newborn Khajiit. Two Alfik, the size of two house cats, can procreate and the mother can give birth to a large Pamar if the moons are in the correct phases. And in addition to that, we know that all types of Khajiit can procreate with all types of Khajiit, and thus give any type of offspring. Although due to the size differences, house cat size Khajiit and basically tiger size Khajiits, some combinations are, let's say, hard to pull off, or rather physically challenging, as one Elder Scrolls Online developer put it. Anyway, due to the inherent randomness of Khajiit birth, there is no discrimination inside Elsewhere against any type of Khajiit. Each type of Khajiit, so each fur stock, is treated equal no matter which fur stock they belong to. This has made it so that some type of Khajiit are only very rarely seen outside of Elsewhere, sometimes do get discriminated or mistreated outside of Khajiit society, both intentionally and unintentionally by non-Khajiit. But that does bring us to the different types of fur stock. There are 17 in total of them, although one could say that there are 9 types of fur stock with 8 subtypes, depending on how you view it. This is since each type of fur stock, except the main, which is a variant we'll talk about later, each type has a bigger variant of fur stock with the rat suffix behind it. So you've got, for example, the Pamar, and then you've got the Pamar rat, both born under different moon phases, but in most fur stock cases essentially the same type of Khajiit, just bigger and in most cases a bit more bestial in their physiology. But since the Khajiit themselves treat these rat types different as fur stocks, and some have a bit more differences in just being bigger, we will as well in this video. We'll treat them as different. And we're starting with one of the fur stocks that people will likely be most familiar with, the Cathay. The Cathay are one of the fur stock of Khajiit that are playable in Skyrim and Oblivion, and according to the developers, the only fur stock playable in the Elder Scrolls Online. These are the Khajiit most people think of when the word Khajiit is thrown around. And they are one of the races most common outside of Elsewhere, and this fur stock is born under these moons when Messer is in his waxing phase and Secunda is in its full phase. Their bigger and more bestial versions, the Cathay rat, are born when Messer and Secunda are both in their waxing phase and are a bit rarer outside of Elsewhere. They're very similar to their non-rat counterparts, except that their bodies are more jaguar-like, as the Imperial Geographical Society puts it in their pocket guides, and they are faster and more agile than their non-rat counterparts. It's also most common to find them with jaguar fur patterns, although they can appear with other fur patterns as well. Next up we've got the Cathay, another playable fur stock, which is born when Messer and Secunda are both new, so when it seems like there's no moons at all present in the skies. The Cathay are very similar to the Cathay. They are one of the most common types of Khajiit, and the only noticeable difference I could find between the Cathay and the Cathay is that the Cathay are a bit more leopard-like in their facial features, other than the Cathay, which are more like a real-life puma. But that could just be attributed to the examples that we have that are confirmed to belong to these fur stocks. It's theorized that the Cathay is one of the first stocks that a player can belong to in Skyrim and Oblivion, depending on the choices in the character menu. Their Rat variant, or the Cathay Rat, which is born when Masr is in its new phase and Secunda is in its waning phase, is also probably familiar to many, as it's the Khajiit first stock that we play as in Morrowind, and which we see in the Elder Scrolls Redguard. They are more agile and are able to jump higher than their non-Rat counterparts, and they are also better sneakers. However, when we compare the Cathay and Cathay first stock, including their Rat counterparts, it seems that the Cathay come out on top when talking about physical prowess and warrior capabilities, as the Cathay and their Rat counterparts apparently have more muscle mass than the Cathay on average. Next up, let's talk about the Toj. We don't have much on either the Toj or the Toj Rats. They seem very similar to the Cathay, with the notable exception that their leg structure is different. So far, both the Cathay and Cathay have been first stock with plantigrade leg structure, while these guys have a digitigrade leg structure. This low resolution image on screen right now is the best way to simply explain the difference visually. Now, we haven't seen the Toj in any of the games, although that's probably because the developers could not be bothered to make a different leg structure model, so it's possible that we have seen them, but just not in their lore accurate way. Except with this confirmed statue of a Toj and a confirmed statue of a Toj Rat that we do have in Elder Scrolls Online, but just no NPCs of this kind. We do know, however, that the Toj are born when Masr is in its waxing phase and Secunda is in its new phase, and the Toj Rat, we know that they are born when Masr is waxing and Secunda is waning. Something interesting on the Toj Rat, however, seems to be that they have more rounded ears like a cheetah and are more cheetah-like, while the regular Toj seem to be a little bit more leopard-like, but that could just be the example statues that we have. Again, these are the only confirmed Toj that we have. Anyway, pretty interesting. Next up, we've got the Pamar first stock and the Pamar Rat first stock. There seems to be no real striking difference between the two variants this time, other than the size and the strength. Both the Pamar and the Pamar Rats resemble very large tigers. Both first stock are bipedal, so walk on two legs, and are both considered to be very strong. They have large muscle mass and are less agile than all the previous races, but they are, especially the Pamar Rat, which are stronger and larger than their non-Rat counterparts. They are the best warriors of Elsewhere and the largest upright walking Khajiit first stock. The regular Pamar is born when Masr in its full phase and Secunda is in its new phase, while the Pamar Rat are born when Masr is in its full phase and Secunda is in its waning phase. But the Pamar are not the largest first stock in general, as we still have the Sencha, specifically the Sencha Rat, which holds that honor. The Sencha, which is born when Masr and Secunda are in their full phases, are large cats, larger than a grown horse, which walk on four legs. They most resemble large lions with the ears of a lynx. They are said to be very intelligent, and some train themselves to be efficient war steeds for fellow Khajiit first stocks which walk on two legs, as they are the fastest first stock around and almost the strongest. The ideal steed for on the battlefield, as both the steed and rider are then intelligent beings. Now, the Sencha Rat is even bigger, although it's a bit slower and less agile than their non-Rat counterparts. They're born when Masr is in its full phase and Secunda is in its waxing phase, and they have a slightly shorter and straighter legs, and they have a shorter body span than their non-Rat variants. However, they make up their decrease in speed with an increase in muscle mass and raw physical strength. These are the strongest first stock by far, and despite being slower, they are still very fast compared to other first stock. The Sencha Rat also often train themselves as war steeds, as they are fearsome on the battlefield, but apparently they dislike being ridden by other Khajiit a bit more than their non-Rat counterparts, who don't really seem to mind as long as they're being treated with respect. Meanwhile, the Sencha Rat seems to generally dislike being ridden more. Both the Sencha and Sencha Rat are very rarely seen outside of Elsewhere, as non-Khajiit usually mix them up with beasts and non-intelligent creatures like lions, leading to degrading situations outside of Khajiit society. This is why they often keep themselves inside Elsewhere, as among the Khajiit they will get the respect they deserve, since the Sencha and the Sencha Rat are every bit as intelligent as the other first stock, and are even able to use magic. Although, due to their four-legged nature, they often need help from others to equip any armor or clothing, which is kind of funny. And according to some Daggerfall/Morrowind era lore, both the Sencha and Sencha Rat have twice as long forelegs as their hind legs, which we don't see in any of the games, so that's probably even retconned. Anyway, lore. Another first stock of Khajiit, which is only rarely seen outside of Elsewhere, are the Alfiq. This first stock is born when Masr is waning and Secunda is full. It's very similar in size and appearance to a regular house cat. And this is immediately the reason why they are so rarely seen outside of Elsewhere, as it often leads to non-Khajiit treating them like house cats, wanting to cuddle them and keep them as pets. We even have the case of the Alfiq Janessa in the Elder Scrolls Online, who has been kidnapped because people thought that she was a cute stray cat, which would make an adorable pet. But yeah, while they're undeniably very cute, they are also remarkably intelligent. They can speak, and they are apparently gifted in magic, particularly compared to other first stock. What's funny, however, is that while they dislike being seen as house cats, in times of war, Alfiq will pose as stray cats or even house cats as spies and informants in times of war with the enemies of Elsewhere. Also, just like both Sencha first stock, the Alfiq and their Rad variation, which we'll talk about in a bit, cannot equip their own clothes and need to be helped due to their four-leg nature. Now, of their Rad version, we know very little, other than that they are born when Masr is in its waning phase and Secunda is in its waxing phase. It's also logical to conclude that they are a bit bigger than their non-Rad counterparts, which means that they may be the size and perhaps the shape of a bit of a lynx. Some people in the community heavily theorize that they may look like lynxes, but we don't have any actual in-game evidence for that. For all we could know, the Alfiq Rad could just look exactly similar to the Alfiq, and we may see several in Elder Scrolls Online. Maybe this is the one with the least differences. I guess we just don't know until it's clarified. Something else we don't actually know until it's clarified is what happened to the Omus first stock. By far the strangest type of Khajiit, in my opinion at least. They are born when Masr is in its new phase and Secunda is in its full phase, and they are almost indistinguishable from Bosmer, so from wood elves in their appearance. They have no fur, they have no tails, and they are basically exactly the same as Bosmer's, save for their internal biology. This is the type of Khajiit that we see everywhere in the Elder Scrolls Arena and Daggerfall, so the first two installments of the series. And it's said that they often paint their faces in Elsewhere to resemble cats and fit in with the other first stock. Pretty interesting, but a shame we have not seen them since Daggerfall, except for this statue of an Omus Rad in the Elder Scrolls Online, meaning that they have not been retconned or forgotten, we just don't see them. As the Omus Rad are essentially the same as the Omus, except they have very light fur on their skin, which is also very short, and they do in fact have a tail, as you can see in this statue. Due to the human-like nature of their morphology, they also paint their faces in Elsewhere to fit in, and they are born when Masr is in its new phase and Secunda is in its waxing phase. But then again, we haven't seen these guys together with the regular Omus since Arena and Daggerfall, except for this one statue of an Omus Rad. Now, the final type of regular Khajiit first stock are the Dagi and the Dagi Rad. These are once again bipedal Khajiit first stock, so they walk on two legs, and we see them from time to time in the Elder Scrolls Online, although they do seem to be rarer than other types of bipedal Khajiit first stock. Their Rad counterpart looks very similar to the non-Rad counterpart, as both have lynx-like head shapes, and they are generally shorter than most other first stocks, with the Rad variant being slightly bigger. They're the lightest type of first stock, save for the Alfiq, and the lightest type of bipedal first stock in general. They are the most agile type of Khajiit, and they are often seen living in the trees in the jungles, preferring tree houses and being able to move among the trees like monkeys. The regular Dagi are born when Masr is waning and Secunda is in its new phase, while the Dagi Rad are born when Masr and Secunda are both in their waning phases. Now, the rarest Khajiit first stock by far is born when the two moons align and a dark eclipse occurs. This type of first stock is a main, and due to the extreme rarity of this type of first stock, the mains have traditionally held revered positions and spiritual leaders in Elsewhere. The mains are by far the most complicated type of first stock, but luckily for you I've already made a video on the main and everything there's to say about the main first stock, so check out that video if you want to know more about the main, as that one contains all the information on them. It's in the description. I didn't see any reason to do it again if you want to know it. Anyway, that almost concludes this video on the Khajiit first stock, but one last interesting thing. During the 4th era, between the years 98 and 100, the two moons, Masr and Secunda, vanished. Now, I made a video on this occurrence back in the channel's early years, so watch that for the full story, but that's also in the description. But the real question is, what happened to newborn Khajiit during this period called the Void Nights, when the moons were just completely gone? Were the Khajiit completely infertile? Were the babies born lifeless? Did it create a new type of Khajiit, or if somehow just the reflected light of the moons is important for birth? Which makes no sense, as Khajiit can be born in daylight, but if that's the case, does it mean that it counts as 2 new moons, so would only regular Suthay Khajiit be born, which are born under a Master and Secunda in a new phase? We don't know, but I'd love to hear your ideas. Honestly, we just don't know what happened at that point with the Khajiit, but we do know that it was so important for them that the moons were brought back, that they aligned themselves with the Altmeri Dominion once the Thalmor claimed that they were the ones to bring the moons back. Anyway, that's basically all I can say about the different type of fur stock and how they are born. I sincerely hope that you learned something, but before I end this video, allow me to say I hope to see you again in the next Elder Scrolls lore video, and allow me to thank my top Patreon supporters, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Polarized Putin, Athena Iotis, King Chris, Subscribe to the Scrolls, Doji, Fenrir, Sword of Bushido, Char Mikal, and Mr. Christmas. It's thanks to these people and all the others on screen that this channel stays alive, and for that I am very grateful. That said, I hope to see you all in the next Elder Scrolls lore video. Bye bye.